French media on sustainable fashion and host of the podcast Onward Fashion. And today I have the great honor to share this panel with three amazing women, Elisabetta Baronio, Arizona Muse, and Nina Marenzi, to talk about generative agriculture leading to generative fashion. Ladies, I'd like you please to introduce yourself and tell us maybe how did you step in regenerative agriculture? Elisabetta, please.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Victoire, and to the whole team for having us and for having Timberland into the panel. I'm Elisabetta Baronio. I'm the Sustainability Manager for Timberland in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And as a brand, we have always been committed to sustainability, and the next step of our sustainability journey is actually regenerative agriculture. We are a brand based on natural material, and regenerative agricultural practices are going to play a big role for us to step into the net positive area.
Very well. Arizona, please.
I am Arizona Muse. I am so pleased to be here with you today talking about one of my all-time favorite subjects, regenerative agriculture. How did this come to be one of my favorite subjects? I have been asking myself, and you might ask as well. I'll tell you the story. It's because I am a model and I became a climate activist. This happened because I realized I didn't know where all these clothes came from, the ones I was wearing and the ones that I was helping to sell. This kind of made me realize, I think I should learn. I think I should understand where these clothes are coming from. And so I started this journey, which I now refer to as my sustainability journey. And I have to say, it has been the most exciting thing I've ever done. It is filled with learning. Fashion connects the whole world, I've understood now, through the supply chain, through materials. And now I work as an educator to share what I learn and continue to educate myself on a daily basis. This is a full-time, non-stop job, I've learned. But I love it. I really love it. It has changed the way I think about the world. It's changed the conversations that I have. I feel like it's enriched my life rather than the common conception of sustainability being something that is full of denial, full of kind of the less good option, and that's just not true. I have a much more enriched life now that I've become more sustainable. Fashion is deeply connected with agriculture. It is, in fact, I now call it an agricultural industry because most of our clothing is grown. So I've become really passionate about regenerative agriculture and cannot wait to talk about it today.
So my name is Nina Marenzi. It actually appears as Christina on the screen here. Their big brother must know more. They must know my passport. Anyway, so I run the Sustainable Angle and Future Fabrics Expo for the last 10 years. And it's one of my biggest passions ever. And regenerative agriculture is, as Arizona says, it's the future, really. It's all about how we move from sustainable textiles onto another level, which is actually regenerative and restorative of nature, especially soil. And that is so needed because most of our textiles are actually grown in the soil. And so, yes, for the Future Fabrics Expo, regenerative agriculture is a very big focus already since early 2020 and goes through all of this year and next year.
Thank you very much. Okay, to start with, I would like us to put a few definitions because you told us, Arizona, that you are into sustainable fashion, but it's different from organic fashion or regenerative agriculture and fashion. So we all know what we talk about. Can you please explain the differences and maybe explain as well why does regenerative agriculture contributes to fights against climate change and social inequities? Please.
I feel like definitions are one of the fundamentally important issues of this sustainability conversation, the wider movement of climate change, because particularly in fashion, there are many confusions about what all these words mean and where to apply them. So I'll tell you my version of these words. Regenerative agriculture is the type of agriculture that actually restores the balance of biodiversity, and it leaves soil in better condition each year than it was before. This is different to just organic, which perhaps is less toxic than conventional agriculture, but follows the same formula as conventional agriculture, which is to fertilize the soil, plant the seed, grow the plant, harvest the plant, start again, fertilize the seed, fertilize the soil. That can be, there's also a wide spectrum of organic. So organic can be just a non-toxic version of that, right up until regenerative organic, which is a regenerative type of organic farming where you're actually restoring balance to the soil and to life on the farm. Going into a few other definitions, I think sustainable is a word that no one can define. So let's just take that for what it is and stop trying to define it, because it's so wide. Everyone uses it differently. It's now being used in greenwashing very often. I see that when I find that when you apply the word sustainable to agriculture, it's too vague. So brands I see are saying sustainably sourced cotton. And to me, that doesn't mean enough. I need to know exactly, was it certified organic? That's great. That means, yes, it's a non-toxic version of farming. I know it's going to be a lot better than the conventional counterpart. Also, with conventional agriculture, the seed is almost always genetically modified, which means it has been engineered to withstand heavy amounts of chemicals, and those are very, very harmful to the ecosystem around the farm, because of course they don't stay on the farm. They run off in the water, join the water cycle, which the water is the great connector of the whole earth. Water will find its way everywhere in the whole planet. And so as we use agricultural chemicals, even just in one place, they will find their way to the rest of the places on the earth as well. And that's one of the reasons why we're finding a lot of health problems in humans, but also in animals and in plants and in the whole ecosystem of the earth. Vegan is the last definition that I'd like to talk about, because vegan often has become synonymous with healthy in food, and that is not the case with fashion. Vegan fashion is often made purely of petrochemical-based materials, which are plastics. They are derived from the oil and fossil fuel industry. So when you're buying sustainably, if something says vegan, that doesn't necessarily mean that it is sustainable. Look further, read the label, understand if that is a vegan leather perhaps made from grapevines. Great choice. Nina has a huge array of sustainable vegan leathers that are absolutely wonderful and having a positive impact on the planet, but it's not the case with all of them. So really get wise about this and read labels.
Thank you so much. Can you tell us a bit about the social commitments that are linked to regenerative agriculture?
Regenerative agriculture tends to be the safest for the humans who work within it. These farms have an attitude that absolutely encompasses human regeneration as well, and community regeneration, as well as soil regeneration. I personally go and volunteer on biodynamic farms with my children. I love it. It's the most amazing way to spend the day as a family or on your own. These farmers are so intelligent, so observant. Their way of looking at the world is on another level of being human. And that sensitivity, that understanding of a way of being, of a way of living, is not congruent with abuse or poor working conditions or exploitation. And so it just doesn't happen. It's a very, very safe choice if you really want to know that your money is being spent in a way that is not harming other humans on this planet.
Yeah, hearing you speaking, I feel like regenerative agriculture principles are both very basic and futuristic. And as we have a business audience here, I would like everyone to understand that we do not talk about a niche, but rules that are applicable to a whole industry. And for this, Nina, would you please tell us what fabrics as concerned as the specialist you are, and also who is this for? I mean, what kind of brands? Is it for craftsmanship or like huge brand? We have kind of a, a Gemini up there. Elisabetta from Timberland is maybe the answer to that question. Sorry, but as you work with many different brands, is it scalable? Just tell us.
Okay, I'm delighted to. Yes, so as we said, regenerative agriculture is all about soil health, and it's all about restoring fertility in the soil. And so therefore all materials that are really grown in the earth are basically can be grown in a regenerative farming practices. So that goes from cotton, wool, it can include hemp, linen, of course also leather, because regenerative agriculture is also including animals. It's an essential part of it because they help fertilize the soil through grazing practices, and it's in regenerative agriculture, it's all about getting these animals back on the land and out of the feedlot. So it's very the opposite of industrialized agriculture. So it's all about getting the soil to be fertilized, including animals. So in terms of what brands could this be aimed for, it really is going to be a solution across the board, because the reason for that really is, and we can give examples of brands who have been working with this. Of course, Timberland is one of the leading ones, but there's others. But the main point about it is that it is one of the nature-based solutions, and it's estimated that about 30% of climate action could come from nature-based solutions to try and meet the climate targets set in the Paris Agreement. So this is a really big thing, and it will apply to all the big brands as much as also smaller ones. So the ones to name probably really are anything from Patagonia is of course one of the main ones. They've even helped establish the Regenerative Organic Alliance. Then I would call also Eileen Fisher. That's another very big brand who has put their weight behind it and is part of the Savory Institute. Caring as a group has very much committed to it for all its brands. There are smaller ones like Australian brand Maggie Marilyn has also been very pro regenerative agriculture and is trying to source materials like that. So I mean, I'd say it's across the board that this will apply to for all industries in fashion.
Okay, that's good news. Maybe Elisabetta, you can start by telling us how does Timberland define sustainability, and maybe explain the plan on regenerative fashion, which is a big one. What is the time and what are the goals?
Perfect. When it comes to sustainability, I will say that as Timberland, we have been working on it for the past 3 decades. So we have really developed, I will say, a structure for our sustainability strategy. In our case, we work on 3 pillars. The first one is about stronger communities. So we work in our communities to ensure that we are creating a positive impact. We work also what we call greener future. What does it mean, greener future? We are committed to plant 50 million trees by 2025, and this is a super important target for us. But then there is probably the area in which we are I would say that is more material for a fashion brand, and this is better products. We know by fact that 43% of our impact of our CO2 emission actually come from the choice of the raw material. Starting from this data, we built a roadmap to ensure that we were actually going beyond what we call sustainability right now, that it's really about sustaining something that is degraded. We really want to do something more. And that's why we released our 2030 vision. Our 2030 vision is about having a net positive impact on the planet and create products that have a net positive impact on nature by 2030. How we are going to do so is going to be through different routes. The first route is about circularity. So we are going to design 100% of our products for circular design, while the second route is about regenerative. We are going to source 100% of our natural materials towards regenerative sources. When I say 100% of our natural materials by 2030 from regenerative sources, I mean all our leather, all our rubber, all our cotton, all our wool, and also sugarcane, that is becoming a really important part for biocompounds. So I know that it's quite a challenging journey for sure, but it is, we think, what is needed right now in the market. I'm totally agreeing with what Arizona and Nina were saying, like regenerative agriculture is really something that we can bring a scale, and it's really something that can play a major role in carbon sequestration.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm curious about the process. I mean, for regenerative farming, how does one proceed? Maybe Arizona, you could answer that question. You mentioned the seed, you mentioned the animals, but does that mean that we have to deconstruct the whole supply chain? And if yes, how do we do so from seed to our dressing, our closets?
I am someone who is always looking at the big system and seeing how we can make changes to the big system. Rather than fighting against a system that isn't working, let's change the system. At the moment, fashion has a system that prioritizes time pressure. And that's not healthy for the humans who are along the supply chain, nor is it healthy for the people who grow the raw materials. And it definitely isn't healthy for the manufacturers who are making these clothes. There is a wonderful organization, new one, called Rewiring Fashion, started by Dries van Noten, and the roundtable discussion sessions for this group were hosted by the Business of Fashion. I think it's a wonderful initiative. Their agenda is to reimagine the fashion calendar so that it doesn't harm brands, so that it actually serves the industry. Because at the moment, there is a disconnect with the fashion calendar, the show seasons, the showrooms, and then the selling of the garments and the wearing of the garments. So just one example is that the brands dress celebrities in the new collections 6 months before the new collections are available to sell. So often dressing celebrities is a very expensive endeavor for brands, and yet they're not able to sell the clothes directly off the back of that. And so this is one example of how this calendar is not working for the people within fashion. And I love initiatives like this because they are really challenging the system and coming at it from a very practical point of view. So let's make it work for us. I do believe that we need a huge shift and a massive change in order to ensure that everyone can set goals as ambitious as Timberland's to source all natural materials from regenerative sources and hopefully to reduce the amount of synthetic materials we use drastically.
Okay, well, it's very reassuring to know that such big brands are, starting to think and to act in this direction. So once we got the fabric, what about the eco-design process? Maybe Nina, you could tell us a bit about that. Do we need to reinvent everything in order to biodegrade properly or recycle properly clothes? And I'm curious also about the collaterals. I mean the finishing, the dyeings, etc., which I know that they aren't for the most of them sustainable so far. How can we proceed?
Yes. Okay. There's quite a lot in that question. So when it comes to design process, I would say definitely anything that we're talking about here in terms of materials needs to sit in a wider framework of a design approach, and that goes very much with the philosophy behind regenerative agriculture. It's all about taking the wider system, and in that case nature, really into account, and how can we make sure that the very foundation upon what we depend on, so that is for food and fashion, both of them really need to have need to be sitting in that wider framework of restoring and regeneration of the soil. And so when it comes to the design process, what we want to really promote is anything that goes just beyond sustainability. It really is about how we can ensure that, for example, when it comes to soil, that we go way beyond those 60 years of harvest that we're supposed to still have. So when you're looking at the forecast of the Food and Agriculture Organization, the FAO, they're forecasting that we have about 6 years left because we've lost so much topsoil already. So regenerative agriculture sits within that, and it nourishes and restores the soil so that we can go further. But when it comes to the the general design process, I would say it's something that really sits with the designer, because the designer, we know, has about, the estimation is around 80% of the impact, environmental impact of a product sits with the design, at the design stage. And so it's really important for anyone who's designing it to really think about, okay, where does this product end up being once its use is over? You know, what happens to it? So yes, you can talk about circularity and recyclability, and that's all really, really important. But when it comes to natural materials, for example, they can go back into the soil. But in order for them to go back into the soil, they need to be produced in a non-toxic manner. Otherwise, you know, we have a problem. So to cut a very long story short, for the design philosophy, I think if we look towards nature as our teacher and really think about how there's no waste in anything that nature does, then our design process will also lead to really designing with the end point in mind, and where does that material go back into? Can it go back into the soil and actually not only not pollute, but actually can contribute to restoring the earth, which sounds a bit, a lot of people misunderstand it as something that is more of a hippie culture, but actually it's fundamental to our survival, because we do know that we've lost so much topsoil through erosion and industrial ways of farming. Have I answered everything? Not really.
No, the question was tricky. My bad, but I mean, this is a fascinating subject, and I think that we are here planting a seed, you know, in the brains of designers and stakeholders in general. And as we said with Timberland, the goal is at, you know, 2030 at least. So we know that it's going to take time, and we are just starting right now.
Just one thing, if I may, just as to your question for collaterals, as you called it, a lot of these are made from synthetic materials. So it is important that when you're looking at the wider picture of regenerative design, that you're looking at how they can be recycled, or even better, how can they actually be replaced by natural materials. So for example, with wool, there's a lot of design now looking at solid wool, or how can you make zippers, etc., from materials that are not synthetic. So there is so much innovation going on right now in all of this area. But one last thing, there's in the finishing process, so how materials are actually treated to be flame retardant or to be water repellent, etc. That also has a huge impact and is very often loaded with chemicals. So again, there's a lot of innovation going on there.
Thank you. Maybe we could have concrete examples with Timberland, how, you know, what you just described. Can you tell us a bit how you reorganize your whole supply chains, and yes, what challenges maybe do you face?
Yes, let's say that we're still in the process. So we haven't yet, it's a journey. Our journey is until 2030, because it's a massive uplift for a brand like us to actually move all our supply chain towards regenerative natural materials. So it has been since now a really interesting journey for us, full of learnings. Simply, a supply chain for regenerative material was not existing before. So take the leather, for example. We are probably the first brand worldwide that has been commercializing regenerative leather. We didn't have suppliers to go to and ask for regenerative hides. We had really to go back to the farmers level to create this connection between farmers and tanneries to ensure that we had materials flowing throughout the process. So it was really a huge work behind. Right now we are working around with 400 ranches that are working with regenerative practices. So this is quite a good number already. But at the beginning, we had to go, I would say, almost one by one to find them and to put the material into our supply chain. So I would say that this is probably like the first challenge we had to face. There was no supply chain. We had to create it. And we had to do the same, and we are still doing the same for other materials besides leather. The other challenge is about the quantity of material that we can source. Of course, we are a big brand, and to cover our collection needs, we need good quantities of material. Sometimes those farmers were really small, so we had to work with industry organization to ensure that they were working together, and we could kind of have, I would say, a quantity that was enough to cover at least a certain size. And then I would say that the other challenge was that we don't have plan B for if those farmers cannot deliver against our needs. So we had this issue with cotton last for winter. So we were supposed to introduce organic cotton coming from regenerative farming from fall winter 20. We couldn't because the farmer had an issue and couldn't provide us the material. So right now the issues are really about the scale that is not yet there to ensure we can serve all our needs. What we are really doing is to work with farmers to ensure that they are transitioning to regenerative practices. We have been founding 250 farmers in India to transition to regenerative organic and so on. All these type of initiatives that are helping us to build a more robust supply chain and ensure that we can give continuity to regenerative materials in the market.
Okay.
Can I say something about what Elisabetta said that really moved me? Because you said that you had to start from scratch. It didn't exist, what you wanted. And I just want to dwell on that for a moment and say how exciting I find that. This is, when I was a kid, I used to want to be an explorer. And I was really disappointed that that wasn't going to be possible because all the islands have been found. You can't go and take a boat and find a new island because we have satellites and we know where they all are. And now I feel like I'm an explorer working in the sustainable movement because there are so many things we don't yet know how to do. There are so many things that we haven't understood how we can implement this in a big business sort of way. It is the most exciting sector to work in. So I just want to say this to the audience that like we can all be explorers. We can all be heroes. This is our chance.
And this is exactly the way you tell it when you try to raise a voice about that. And when we prepared the panel, Elisabetta, you told me once you're able to tell the story, the consumers will get excited. But you also told me that like the internal group and your team was super excited about the first products, that they wanted to know more and do more. And yeah, I think you have to see it as an adventure, as you said, Arizona.
It has been indeed, I would say, like if I look, for instance, to our team internally, and if we look at them, how they were feeling about regenerative culture at the beginning, those strange things we didn't know what was about. If we see them now when they are building the collection, they are all excited about regenerative. They want to use more because they understood the importance. Once you really see what is going to make to the soil, and once you are going to Nina's point, when you realize that the importance of the topsoil, that is probably one of the most undervalued concept in our world, not just in our industry. Nobody was taking care of the soil. Honestly, if we don't take care of the topsoil, we are not taking care of ourselves. Once we realized that, we had such an excitement internally that made things to move way faster than what we were expecting.
Can I say something for the audience too? Because I feel for them thinking, oh, this is so exciting, and then where are they going to get this? So, and this is to the point what we discussed also before, is of course there are this is very much the future, yes, and there's a lot of innovation going on and it's super exciting. But there are also already certification organizations that are making this possible for others to join this journey. So I would really raise this for anybody who's sourcing materials. So when it comes to cotton, to really look for something called ROC, the Regenerative Organic Certified Standard, which is global, but started in the US upon the initiative of Patagonia as well, and the Rhode Island Institute. But there's others. I mean, there's the Responsible Wool Standard obviously looking at wool, which is part of the textile exchange, and they have made lots of different connections with other organizations, Ovis 21, I mean, Grassland organization. There's lots of those who really are trying to help the farmers to go down that journey, and they are already available. I mean, you were asking me, Victoire, whether we have any examples to mention, but there really is. If you're starting to look, and once you know what to ask for, you will find it. And definitely, I would want to mention Oshadi, which is Oshadi is an Indian company. They work with wool, with organic cottons, etc. They won, I think, the Woolmark Prize a while ago. And there are these things around. So once you start searching, you find it. Or leather. Leather is coming on stream now, which is regenerative organic. I think White Oak Pasture is typically one that is very much part of the Savory Institute as an organization that helps fashion brands to find these materials. So again, look for those. Savory Institute is another one. So there are ways to find it already now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. You're so right about this, Nina. And this is, to me, part of the reinvention of the whole fashion industry, the fact that there is collaboration, there is solidarity, fashion communicating with science also. And this is all things that the three of you stand for. So thank you very much for that, for your time here. I hope that we will inspire the people, in the audience. Thank you, Première Vision, for having us. And
thank you very much.
Forward to seeing what it's going to be, what fashion is going to be in 10 years.
Me too. It's exciting. It's changing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.